Chapter 3 India and Southeast Asia. Buddhism. Who was the Buddha? Siddhartha Gautama was born into a royal family in Lumbini, now located in Nepal. He was the son of Queen Maya and King Sodahana. The son of an Indian warrior king, Gautama led an extravagant life through early adulthood, reveling in his privileges and social caste. After encountering an old man, an ill man, a corpse, and an ascetic, Gautama was convinced that suffering lay at the end of all existence. He renounced his title, became a monk, deprived himself of possessions in the hope of comprehending the truth of the world around him. The culmination of this search came while meditating beneath a tree. He finally understood how to be free from suffering and ultimately to achieve salvation. Following this epiphany, he was known as the Buddha, meaning enlightened one. He then spent the remainder of his life journeying around India, teaching others what he had come to understand. At 29, he realized that wealth and luxury did not guarantee happiness. So he explored different teachings, religions, and philosophies of the day to find the key to human happiness. He died at the age of 80. In Buddhism, there are 4 noble truths. Number 1, all life entails suffering. 2, the cause of suffering is desire. 3, removing desire removes suffering. 4, the way to remove desire is to follow the Eightfold Path. The first truth is that life is suffering. It means life includes pain, there's getting old, disease, ultimately death. These are all things we all have to deal with. Buddhism explains how suffering can be avoided and how we can be truly happy. The second truth, that suffering is caused by craving, aversion. In other words, getting what you want does not guarantee happiness. Wanting deprives us of contentment and happiness. The third truth is that suffering can be overcome. Happiness can be attained if we give up these useless cravings and learn to live each day at a time, not dwelling in the past or in the future. This is nirvana. The fourth truth is that the Noble Eightfold Path is the path which leads to the end of suffering. The Eightfold Path is being moral, developing wisdom by understanding the 4 noble truths and developing compassion for others. Some of the other ideas of Buddhism we need to know are karma. It's the idea that every cause has an effect. We need to look at the intention behind the action, the effects of the action on oneself, and the effects on others. Sutras are the translation of Buddha's word. It is Sanskrit for thread or line. Bodhisattva is a Buddhist who has reached nirvana but has chosen to stay in the world to help others achieve nirvana too. Buddhas in the making. They're saint-like. You might have seen a laughing Buddha before. These come from China. According to Chinese history, Budai was an eccentric Chan monk who lived in China during the later Liang period. He was a native of Zhejiang, and his Buddhist name was Ch3. He was considered a man of good and loving character. You might also notice as we go through that several of the Buddhas have long ears. This is because they signify wisdom and compassion. It is said that he had the ability to hear the sound of the world, and he hears the cries of suffering and responds to ease the suffering. Nirvana is the supreme form of enlightenment that frees from earthly concerns or desires, achieved through meditation and yoga. Vedas are poetic hymns and philosophical writings. A stupa, which we will see in just a minute, is a large hill-like shrine, symbolized as the world mountain and dome of heaven. Here is the map that we'll be discussing in this chapter. We'll be talking about India and other areas in Southeast Asia. This is a bodhisattva that we have at the museum. It is large, about life size. You might have actually heard these in the news occasionally. There are some that actually do have mummified monks inside. Ours does not. but you can see some of the characteristics that we'll be talking about with bodhisattvas. Here are some of the other types of Buddhas that we have in our collection. You'll notice the one on the left is actually from Thailand and has the long ears. On the right is the laughing Buddha that I mentioned earlier. Here's another Buddha that we'll be talking about the hand positions later and the importance of them. And this is actually a copy of the Burmese Buddhist Sutras. Again, the translation of Buddha's word. The Burmese script, or what is now known as Myanmar, was developed in the 8th century. The name changed from Burma to Myanmar in 1989, in case you're curious. It is a beautiful script, and you will see some of the flourishes. The text itself is on accordion-style pages, and in the pages, you will notice, are gilded on the edge. All right, let's start with the Great Stupa. This is in Sanchi in India from the Shunga period. As I mentioned earlier, a stupa is a mound that symbolizes the axis of the world mountain. And the interior symbolizes the arc of the sky. This is one of the oldest stone structures in India. It was originally commissioned by the Emperor Ashoka in the 2nd century BC. It is a hemispherical brick structure built over what is believed to be the relics of the Buddha. It was crowned by a Ch3, that parasol-like structure symbolizing high rank, which was intended to honor and shelter the relics. Again, it's meant to symbolize the heavens enclosing the earth. The railing is said to represent World Mountain. The central pillar, the Yashti, symbolizes the cosmic axis and supports a triple umbrella structure, the Ch3, which is held to represent the 3 jewels of Buddhism, the Buddha, the Dharma, or doctrine, and the Sangha, or community. The circular terrace, Medi, is enclosed by a railing surrounding the dome. The faithful circumambulate in a clockwise direction. The entire structure is enclosed by a low wall, the Vedika, which is punctuated at the 4 cardinal points by toranas, or ceremonial gateways. Those gateways are 35 feet tall. They illustrate the lives of the Buddha, who was not shown in human form in any of these early structures. The Yasti, the axis of the world mountain with its 3-tiered chatra or umbrella, again symbolizes the Buddha, the law, and the community of monks. Here's a close-up of the gateway that you can see here. You can see these, again, illustrating the life of the Buddha. And here is a illustrated diagram that you can see what each of these things that we're talking about are. So you can see all the parts that we were just discussing. This is a close-up of one of the bracket figures. So this is the exterior of a Ch3 hall at Baha in India, and we actually have a smaller stupa inside. So you have the larger hall, and inside is a stupa. Originally, these halls would have been made of wood. Then they were rock cut, as this one is. We have a kind of horseshoe-shaped entryway. We have interior columns, a rafter-type ceiling, which mimics the original wood designs. Originally, there would have been giant wood doors, but they are no longer around. There are 37 octagonal columns. It is 124 feet long, 46 feet wide, 45 feet high. On the columns themselves, there's inverted lotus blossoms. The stupa is at the far end. This is considered to be one of the earliest surviving Ch3 halls, constructed in the 1st or 2nd century BC. The columns slope inward, again in imitation of the wooden columns. The ceiling is barrel vaulted with ancient wooden ribs set into them. It is thought to be one of the largest of all of the Ch3s. Here are some other views of it so you can kind of see how it is A, part of a much larger structure, and two, cut into the larger rock formation. And here you can see again some of the details. And there you can see how it is cut into the mountainside. And there's a close-up of the stupa. And then you can also see the structure surrounding it as well. This is the interior of another Ch3, and this is a diagram showing all of the different elements. Now it's the Gupta period, 320 to 500 CE. This is a seated Buddha preaching the first sermon from India. This shows some Roman influence in the styling. It's showing Buddha as a man with a nimbus or sun orb surrounding his head. In the West, we typically consider these to be halos. This represents the universal spirit of Buddha. The very bottom of this, you will notice some figures. These are the 6 disciples turning the wheel of law. This refers to Deer Park at Sarnath, where Buddha preached his first sermon, bringing light to all parts of the earth. Mudras are the hand gestures of the Buddha. They convey blessings or teachings. This is a Dharma chakra mudra. This is for teaching. This is when Buddha sets the wheel of the law, or wheel or chakra of the law or dharma in motion, and counts the principles of the eightfold path of righteousness on his fingers. You can see he's doing there. Another thing you'll notice here is the urna. That's the tuft of hair or mole between the brows. Otherwise, we have a very smooth, idealized body. There's the hero's brow, which is that arc of the brow. The eyes are meant to reference lotus buds or fish, oftentimes downcast to reflect inward thought. You will oftentimes see winged lions on the back of the throne, which reference his former life as royalty. This is the colossal Buddha in Afghanistan. There were several of these colossal Buddhas, ranging from 120 to 175 feet tall. Unfortunately, many were destroyed by the Taliban. They were typically encased in these deep, close-fitting niches, and some of them had even been gilded. This one is found in Bamiyan, which was an international trading center on the southern Silk Road. Originally, many of these figures were clothed in draperies. They were also painted with a lime plaster and paint. Bamiyan's central location along the Silk Route made it a fantastic place to put these Buddhas. This was a great place for merchants and missionaries to stop during their travels. The colossal Buddhas appeared sometime in the 6th centuries, with monasteries later being established in the caves around them. Unfortunately, Mullah Omar ordered Taliban forces to demolish the Bamiyan Buddhas in 2001. This is what you will see today. The destruction of the Buddha was, as you can see, complete. In 2015, a couple of artists, Jansen Yu and Lian Hu, a husband and wife team from China, decided to recreate these Buddhas as giant holograms using projection technology. They secured permission from UNESCO to install them there in Bamiyan. These light statues stood for a weekend, drawing the community together in celebration and remembrance. Afterward, the couple donated the projection equipment to Bamiyan so the town can recreate the statues as they wish. Manjushri. Manjushri, his name means gentle glory. He is a symbol of wisdom. He dwelt in the Pure Land and is shown with lotus blossoms, a symbol of purity, enthroned in the cross-legged position of a yogi before a multi-platform temple. This is Ananda attending the parinirvana of the Buddha. In Buddhism, the term parinirvana is commonly used to refer to nirvana after death, which occurs upon the death of the body of someone who has attained nirvana during his or her lifetime. Ananda was the first cousin of the Buddha and one of his principal disciples. known as beloved disciple and devoted companion. Ananda entered the order of monks in the second year of the Buddha's ministry, and in the 25th year was appointed his personal attendant. So the Buddha and his monks came to a grove of sal trees in Kushinagar. The Buddha asked Ananda to prepare a couch between two trees, with its head to the north. I am weary and want to lie down, he said. When the couch was ready, the Buddha lay down on his right side, one foot upon the other, with his head supported by his right hand. Then the sal trees bloomed, although it was not their season. Pale yellow petals rained down on the Buddha. Buddha spoke with his monks. At one point, Ananda left the grove to lean against a doorpost and weep. The Buddha sent a monk to find Ananda and bring him back. Then he said, Enough, Ananda, do not grieve. Have I not taught from the very beginning that all that is dear and beloved there must be change and separation? All that is born comes into being, is compounded, and is subject to decay. How can one say, may it not come to dissolution? This cannot be. Ananda, you have served the Tathagata with a loving kindness in deed, word, and thought, graciously, pleasantly, wholeheartedly. Now you should strive to liberate yourself. He then praised Ananda in front of the other assembled monks. He then advised the monk to keep the rules of the order of the monks. Then he asked 3 times if any among them had questions. Do not be given to remorse later on with the thought, the Master was with us face to face, yet face to face we failed to ask him, but no one spoke. He then serenely passed into Parinirvana. So that is the story of which this sculpture is based on. So we can see the Buddha here laying in that exact position as was described. Now, this particular one is in Sri Lanka, and you can see how large this is. It is 45 feet in length. So you can have a sense of the ginormous scale of this figure. Here I found an image with some people to really kind of give you a sense of the scale of how massive this is. This is the Ananda Temple, located in Myanmar. It was built in around 1100 during the reign of King Kyanzitha of the pagan dynasty. It is one of 4 surviving temples in Bhutan. Now let's talk about Hinduism. This is considered to be the oldest and one of the more complex living religions in the world. It has a belief in reincarnation, that everything is impermanent. It started developed around 500 BC. In Hinduism, there is no ecclesiastical order, there's no religious authorities, no governing body, no prophets, nor any binding holy book. Hindus can choose to be polytheistic, pantheistic, or monotheistic. Most Hindus do revere a body of text, a sacred scripture known as the Veda. There's also a complex system of values known as Dharma. So Hinduism originated in the Indus Valley, near the river Indus in modern-day Pakistan. About 80% of the current Indian population regard themselves as Hindu. Most Hindus believe in a supreme God. They believe in a cycle of birth, death, rebirth that is governed by karma. Hindus believe that the soul passes through a cycle of successive lives, and the incarnation is always dependent on how the previous life was lived. So the Vedas. Veda is a Sanskrit word meaning knowledge. These scriptures do not mention the word Hindu, but they do discuss Dharma, which can be rendered as a code of conduct or a law or duty. Hindus celebrate many holy days, but the Festival of Lights, or Diwali, is one of the best known. Around 1 billion people worldwide identify as Hindu. Hindus believe in a supreme being. They believe in the divinity of the 4 Vedas, the ancient scriptures. They believe in an endless cycle of creation, preservation, and dissolution. They believe in karma, the law of cause and effect. They believe in soul reincarnation. They believe in an enlightened master or Satguru. They believe that all life is sacred. They also believe that no religion teaches the only way to salvation above all others, that all genuine paths are facets of God light. So here's some more terms. Brahman, pure consciousness or pure bliss. One reaches it by meditation and self-control. This continues through reincarnations. A Brahmin is a priest who performs many Hindu sacrifices and rituals. The Vedas, again, are an ancient religious text for which they define truth. There are 4 main Vedas, and then each of those Vedas have, again, 4 parts. There are the Samhitas, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, the Upanishads. The Upanishads were called because they taught those who sat down beside their teachers. These texts developed from the Vedic tradition, but largely reshaped Hinduism by providing believers with philosophical knowledge. These were composed largely between 800 and 200 BC. The Bhagavad Gita, or the Song of the Lord, is part of the 6th book of the Mahabharata, the world's longest poem. The Bhagavad Gita is 18 chapters long, 700 verses. They were composed around 500 BC to 100 CE. It is one of the most popular Hindu texts and is known as Smriti text. It takes the form of a dialogue between Prince Arjuna and Krishna, his charioteer. Arjuna is a warrior. He was about to kill his brothers in a war between 2 branches of a royal family, which would involve killing many of his friends and relatives. He wanted to withdraw from the battle, but Krishna teaches him that he, Arjuna, must do his duty in accordance with his class and argues that death does not destroy the soul. Krishna points out that knowledge, work, and devotion are all paths to salvation. The Ramayana, which is composed around the same time, is also a popular tale. It tells the story of Prince Rama, who was sent into exile in the forest while his wife Sita and his brother Lakshmana. Sita was abducted by an evil demon Ravana, but ultimately rescued by Prince Rama with the help of the monkey god Hanuman. The story is written in 24,000 couplets. It's a story of good overcoming evil. Ganesh is the Hindu lord of learning. Krishna is the embodiment of love, divine joy, and the 8th incarnation of Vishnu. He is a messenger of peace. This is Descent of the Ganges, or Penance of Arjuna. This is in India. This was carved around the 7th century. This is carved into the granite cliffs along the coast of the Bay of Bengal. It measures 100 feet long and 45 feet high. There is some discrepancy on whether it represents the descent of the Ganges or the penance of Arjuna, or maybe even both. So let's talk about those. Arjuna's penance is a story from the Mahabharata of how Arjuna, one of the brothers, performed severe austerities in order to obtain Shiva's weapon. The idea is that one could obtain by self-mortification enough power to even overcome the gods. In order to protect themselves, the gods would grant the petition of any ascetic who threatened their supremacy in this way, a kind of spiritual blackmail. The Descent of the Ganges story is where the sage Bhagaratha performs austerities in order to bring Ganges down to earth. Shiva had to consent to break her fall with his hair, because otherwise its force would be too great for the earth to contain. So we have some elements from both of these stories. We've got this cleft in the stone. You see this division. This is populated by Nagas, or snake deities, or water spirits. This separates the relief into 2 halves. There you can see the snake deities, the Nagas. The water is poured down this cleft in order to simulate a natural waterfall, the Ganges descent. To the left, just above the shrine, Arjuna, or Bhagaratha, stands on one leg, his arms upraised in a yoga posture. Behind him appears Shiva, holding a weapon and attended by Ganas. To the right of the cleft, we have life-size elephants that are carved. You can see that the elephants are protecting their babies. We also see other animals, as well as flying spirits, all carved with a lot of detail and naturalism. Dharmaraja Ratha. Ratha is Chariot of the Gods. These are other carved sculptures commissioned by Mamala I. It's actually an incomplete shrine. It also refers to Arjuna Ratha. So on these carved shrines are actually small model shrines, different small sizes. There's even some false windows in these. You see horseshoe-shaped arches, little rooflets, and there's even images on these kind of squared off corners as well. If these had been completely finished, there would have been some sculptures that would have been set in some of these niches. However, that never happened. Here's a detail. You can see kind of mini shrines that are carved into the roof. Kailasantha Temple. This is in India. This site encompasses 32 cave temples that began with King Krishna I. They were dedicated to Shiva. These were created by excavating 400,000 tons of volcanic rock. The temple covers an area of 60,000 square feet, and the tower rises 96 feet. The entire monument was made by excavation and not by construction. So they are cutting out, not building up. Originally, this was whitewashed, so this would have been a brilliant white to simulate a snow-covered mountain. The designs represent the Ch3 hall temples. They're designed as mandalas. There's a checkerboard pattern of 64 squares that belong to these kind of deities. There's also this axis of Hindu temples are in east-west direction, the direction of the sun, which is the same as in Catholic churches as well. More than 30 temples have been carved from the hillside at Ellora during the 6th to the 9th centuries. And this is the most spectacular of all of these. The pillars, like you see here, are 50 feet high. There's 2 of these obelisk-like pillars. And that gives you kind of an idea of the scale of this place. Here are some details, and this is one of the buildings that has been re-whitewashed. Give you a sense of what it would have looked like. You can just see the extensive area that this encompasses. This is Shiva as Nataraja, Lord of the Dance. This is Shiva performing the Dance of Destruction. This is a bronze piece featuring the Hindu god Shiva, who is creator and destroyer. Shiva is typically shown with long hair, a sign of aestheticism. Remember, aestheticism is a severe form of self-discipline and avoidance of all forms of indulgence. Shiva's dancing within a flaming circle. You can see the little flames surrounding. The raised leg symbolizes the need to escape from ignorance from the world below, and represented by a demon on which he dances. You can see that there. There's the demon. There's the flames. He dances to the heartbeat of the cosmos. The lower right hand makes the mudra of blessing. Shiva's dance destroys the universe, which is then reborn. Shiva holds flame, which symbolizes fire that will consume the universe, and a drum, a symbol of Aksasa, the prime substance from which the universe is built. Vishnu and Lakshmi. Vishnu is the second god in the Hindu triumvirate. The triumvirate consists of 3 gods who are responsible for the creation, upkeep, and destruction of the world. The other 2 are Brahma and Shiva, who we just talked about. So Brahma is the creator of the universe, Shiva, destroyer, and Vishnu is preserver and protector. So you will notice that Vishnu has 4 arms. He's holding a lotus flower in his lower left hand, a mace in his lower right, a conch shell in his upper left, and a discus in his upper right. You will also see Vishnu being depicted with the coils of Ananta, the king of all the Nagas. Remember, Nagas are the snake deities. Lakshmi is the Hindu goddess of wealth, fortune, and prosperity. She is the wife of Vishnu. She's also an important deity in Jainism. She is the goddess of abundance and fortune for Buddhists and was represented on the oldest surviving stupas and caves of Buddhism.